Hello, hello. We are going live, waiting for everything to load. Right. I have a really interesting topic for you all today that I hope you find as interesting as I do. All right. I'm going to close out. I'm trying to find where I'm echoing. Here we are. The Internet Explorer window needs to close. All right. Thank you for your patience there. All right. So I'm excited about our topic today. I want you all to really, I'm going to share, as a lot of times I do, some specific examples from my artwork. And my intent in that is always to encourage you to reflect on your own art process and how you can see these principles that I'm talking about in your own process. I'm going to refer to that many times. I never want you to think I'm just sharing about me for the sake of it. It's always so that you can get something out of that. So I'm going to prompt you throughout this to consider how this relates to your journey and where you can find kind of this meaning that I'm going to talk about in your art. So we're going to talk about noticing patterns in emotions and topics and images and colors that come up in your work, and how that relates to an integration of different parts of yourself. So just to kind of review a little bit, that this process of creating art, of engaging in the creative process and in this redefined process, as I've named it, and then in doing the writing in response to it, that whole process is conducive to accessing different parts of ourselves. Those of you who are familiar with internal family systems or IFS therapy, that approach, it's similar in some ways, and I'm not an expert on that, but I do know a little bit about it, and I've been a client of IFS a little bit in therapy. And so that's this process of kind of going and addressing a younger version of yourself, could be inner child work, could be another version of yourself in adulthood. But basically, this idea in trauma work is that we all have different parts of ourselves. And everybody does, not just those who've been traumatized. And as a part of healing trauma, we can go in and talk to and heal and listen to these different parts of ourselves who have been hurt and traumatized. So that is the purpose of this reflective writing process, is to go in and talk to the artwork, but really we know we're talking to another part of our brain. And I refer to it as your subconscious self, because it's those thoughts and feelings that are not really right at the surface. We have to go in and kind of draw them out, no pun intended. We have to sort of pull them out. I actually did that same accidental pun in an email that I'm going to send out next week. We have to draw them out, pull them out, and physically draw it out to get insight, to get information from those different aspects of ourselves. So what I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to well, first, I'll just remind you for some context here that I've talked before about how in my artwork, I noticed this pattern early on in my recovery from narcissistic abuse when I was in therapy and, doing all of my own artwork to process everything after the divorce. I noticed this pattern of two different main colors coming up in my work, and it was blues and oranges, or really a lot of times cool colors and warm colors, and how they sort of worked together, but also kind of fought against each other at times. And for me, my favorite colors are like blue and turquoise and teal. And those colors for me, I became aware that those colors for me represented aspects of my personality that I already felt comfortable sharing with others, things that are obvious to others, things that I was not only comfortable sharing with others, but just comfortable within myself, right? So the fact that I'm an artist, I love nature, I'm introverted, all those things about me. I'm a very kind of quiet, reflective person, but those who know me well know I can talk a lot one-on-one. It's part of being introverted. Those parts of myself, I eat healthy. Like I said, I'm very connected to nature and the environment. Those things I'm comfortable showing to others and expressing. And then I noticed that when I was using a lot of orange colors, hot pinks, reds, but a lot of time orange, that felt like when I was drawn to using that in my work, when those colors just really stood out to me, and I intuitively just went for it, it was like these more like fiery, passionate aspects of my personality that were needing to come out and be expressed. And through the gradual process of listening to that and doing that over time, using those warm colors, especially orange, I felt like that was an outlet to express those things. And so those aspects of my personality are the more a lot of people know that I'm kind of stubborn and can be outspoken about things I'm passionate about, but sometimes I'll also shrink back from sharing, or I used to shrink back from sharing what I'm passionate about. So that part of me that is letting out those passions, kind of getting on a soapbox and talking about what I care about. Also for me, my femininity, my sexuality, those are things that I just wasn't sure how to express. And so that was kind of held in as a sort of fiery orange that then through the artwork, I was able to release and express and explore even more as I engaged in the writing process. And so throughout the course of the past 5 years or more, I've noticed this pattern of these two colors coming up for me. And that's very symbolic for me. And so now it's just such a part of my process. When I feel like I'm drawn towards orange, which I have been a lot lately, the oranges and the reds, I already know, okay, this is something passionate in me that needs to come out. And that's what I need to be prepared to listen to today. And so what I'm going to share with you today is how some insight that I've had just in this past week it revealed to me the progress that I have made over the course of time with allowing these orange parts of myself to speak. And so not just in the artwork, but as we grow comfortable expressing these different parts of ourselves in the artwork, that translates into the rest of our life, into action. We take action in our life, and my role as a coach is to inspire you to take action out of that art process and becoming comfortable in that safe space of the art making process. Then we start to actually live those things out in our real life. And so I had some insight this week where I saw, oh, wow, like I've made so much progress with this. And it was just a good feeling to notice that progress. So as I've said those things, you're already thinking about the kind of parallel version in your artwork and in your life and your recovery right now. If you haven't, I want you to stop, maybe even pause the video if you're listening to the recording, and reflect on that. What are the patterns that are coming up in your art? Now you can think of this a few different ways. So if it's not obvious to you, you can think through what colors are coming up. Like for me, it was the colors that I was noticing consistently. And if you haven't noticed a pattern in the past, maybe just think of that moving forward, but you could reflect on, what colors, even look back at your actual artwork, what colors have come up for me consistently. You can think back or look back on your writing and consider what emotions are coming up for me. Okay. So if it's a lot of anger that is consistently coming up, then maybe that's a pattern that you can pay attention to. Maybe that's a part of yourself that is needing to come out. Also, so colors, images, I tend to just talk about colors because I work more abstractly, but some of you don't. Some of you work more representationally, which is 100% okay. It's just not where my brain goes a lot of times. So colors, images, and emotions that are consistently coming up, I want you to reflect on those patterns, pay attention to them moving forward. Also, I want you to reflect on the relationship between those patterns and kind of how you're acting and living out your life right now. So another example is that years ago, I've been through long phases where it seemed like in my artwork, that was just where I went to express all of like the dark things, like the dark, depressed feelings, just so much darkness and heaviness in my artwork. And people in my life at those times might not have identified me as a depressed or dark person, but where it needed to speak was in the artwork. So just like my orange has needed to speak for the past few years in the artwork, and then gradually in my life, there were times where it was like just the dark stuff coming out of my work, and that wasn't coming out in my regular life. So reflect on what emotions, colors, and images are coming in your artwork, what meaning that has, and how is that related to how you're living out your life right now, your actions, your interactions with others, your relationships, your self-care. Like, what is the relationship there? So it might be like during that dark phase of my artwork that it seems very disjointed, like you're just expressing it in the art. and it's not really showing in your everyday life, which is okay. There's no judgment there. It just is what it is. So continuing with that example, if I'm just expressing my depression and my sadness in my art, and that's not showing in my everyday life, then that shows me that, number one, this is good that I'm able to express it in the artwork. That's a good outlet for me. Number two, it could encourage me to think about if I'm having trouble like acknowledging it, or like what is the sort of block there that I can't really express this to other people, or maybe even fully look at it myself. And maybe I'm not ready to do that. Maybe there are legitimate reasons why I can't do that yet, and the art is still just a safe place. Okay, so again, there's no right or wrong, but like let's play with it a little and kind of look at those patterns. Okay, so identify colors, emotions, and yeah, the colors, images, and emotions that are coming up consistently over time, and then how that plays into like your actual behaviors and interactions, and how you're expressing your emotions in your everyday life outside of your art making practice. Okay, and let's see. Before I go on, I'm going to do a screen share of some images of my artwork to explain my insight from this week. But before I go on, I want to share kind of a sports metaphor, which I'm not one for sports analogies and metaphors. I'm not a sports person. But in thinking about this morning, I remembered this sort of analogy as this story that I think would be a good analogy, a good example. So I remember years ago, I had a friend, a young man who played rugby. He played on like a community local team here. And I remember him telling me that at the start of the new season of rugby, like in February or something, that his teammates were like really sluggish and having trouble running out on the field, and his coach hollered at them, "You all need to stop eating those cheeseburgers. I can tell you've been eating cheeseburgers. You're not running fast. Like it's game season. Like stop eating the cheeseburgers." And so the coach could tell based on the players' behavior, based on their slow running speed or whatever, that they had not been eating well, had not been taking care of themselves. And he was like, "Okay, it's time to change." Now I'm thinking about this idea of a sports coach related to my role as a coach in the mental health realm. Okay, so the similarities there are coaches motivate you to take action, right? Where traditional therapy is more about looking at your past and all of that and how it relates to the present and moving forward, and there is some focus on action there, but you're really digging more into the past, as you all know who have experienced therapy. Coaching is about kind of being in the present and noticing what's going on and setting goals and taking action to move forward. And so what I want to point out here with this analogy is that as coaches, whether you're a sports coach or in the mental health realm, like life coaching, which is the role I'm playing here for you, we're not saying, like that coach was not saying, okay, we're going to go out on the field first thing, February 1st, whenever the season starts, and play a game, and I expect you to crush it, right? He's not motivating them to just like cold turkey, like get it together, you need to play an awesome game. They had multiple practices. He's saying you need to start eating better, you need to start like running more, you need to start performing better at the practices, and we'll move into it so that we can have a good game season, right? So I'm not saying, of course, we need to like snap out of all these feelings of low confidence and feeling stuck in life and depressed and anxious and just these negative like limiting beliefs spinning in our head. We're not just gonna, my role as a coach is not to tell you to just like snap out of that overnight and get over it and move forward. But my role is to inspire you to make consistent small actions that add up to big change in your life. And so the example I'm going to share is how, I'll go ahead and screen share with you that over the course of time, like I said, paying attention to this pattern of these colors coming up in my work and the emotions related to that, just how I felt in my body when I was using those colors, and the insight that came out in my writing when I used these colors, how over time that has come to mean big change. And I realized that today. So, or not today, the other day. I'm going to share with you today what I realized this week. So this is an example, and I've shared, I'm sure, a lot of these images before. Excuse me, I'm going to share a few examples of kind of this orange or orange and blue coming out in just my more recent crayon and oil pastel drawings I've done in my sketchbook. And I want to point out, this is not so much in this, but a little bit. It's an example of how normally when I draw, you guys have seen my scribble drawings, it's very expressive and there's a lot of mark making. When I move on. So this one, I've shared this one with you before. This, I mean, it's almost, I think a lot of artists would be embarrassed to share this kind of work. My bachelor's degree is in fine arts with an emphasis in painting. I was trained to be a professional artist. This is not professional looking artwork, although I can still do that. But this is literally just to express myself. And you guys see, I fully engage in this scribbling that I teach you all. And this is more than just like a scribbly curly line, but it's essentially a scribble, right? I'm doing zigzags and sections of color without trying to make it look like any representational image, although I did decide in the end this looked kind of like an egg. But so you see that there's a lot of heavy mark making. I want you to notice that because this image I created the other day was a little different. So again, this is a little smoother, but there's those same kind of marks. Yeah, there's a lot of, I have a lot of energy in my body related to these emotions, these passions, like I said, things related to my femininity and sexuality and just like how I sort of show up in the world in that way, those aspects of my identity. And I think that the reason why they come out so strongly and with these kind of marks often is not just that they're things like I'm kind of passionate about, but it's like they kind of come out screaming because they've been held in. And so that's another thing to notice, your mark making, but also just how you feel in your body when you're creating art. Is it something that's just sort of exploding because it hasn't been expressed? Is it coming out screaming? Or is it different? Is it kind of more comfortable with itself, if that makes sense? So this is from the other day, and I'm actually going to share this image and kind of an explanation of this story in an email that goes out next week, but wanted to get a little more in depth with you all here. So the other day I sat down to do art. I always look at kind of my array of my basic drawing materials, the crayons, oil pastels, my jumbo crayons, which I really like because they don't break easy. And I have watercolor paint, usually color pencils, markers, Sharpies. Those are sort of my basic materials that are out that, typically my art therapy clients that meet here in the studio, that's kind of the basic things they have access to unless we're doing some other special project or we're painting. And that's usually what I have sitting out kind of on this table behind me to work with. So I just I always look over those things and just go with what feels like I need in the moment. So I picked up just the regular crayons, which is a little abnormal for me. I hadn't just used those in a while. And I was looking in the crayon bucket at all the beautiful colors, and I felt drawn to these warm colors again. You see, I got a couple of blues out of there, but I got out all the reds and pinks and oranges. Now, I didn't end up using all of these colors in my drawing, which I'll get to this, but it was a quick drawing, just like 5 minutes. So great example of how you can sit down and do something quick and get a lot of insight from it. So I was just picking out these sort of candy colored, like beautiful crayons and really being in the moment and enjoying that process. So even just picking out of the bucket the particular crayons that I felt drawn to in that moment, that was therapeutic for me. That was part of this process. So I want you to be mindful of being in the moment, picking the materials you're drawn to, the colors you're drawn to, and really allowing yourself to sit with that and just notice that entire process, being present in the moment. I mean, it's very meditative and mindful in that sense. To just be fully in the moment and notice and enjoy every step of the process. So I was enjoying picking out these crayons. I left them out on the table for a few minutes after I was finished drawing. I just was kind of sitting with those colors. So I picked those out and I started drawing. Normally, lately, I like to draw within a circle because, that feels just like a safe, calming, soothing shape to contain my emotions. So typically when I sit down to do one of these quick drawings, I knew I wasn't going to spend much time on it. I'll do a circle because that feels safe to me. For some reason today, I went with a square. This looks kind of like a Rothko painting. For those of you who are familiar with Rothko, you know your art history. Not nearly as good as Rothko though, but kind of the same layout here. I was not going for that necessarily. But I just drew this square. I think I drew the square outline with the blue first, and then started filling it in with these oranges and reds. It looks a little lighter here on the screen than it is in person. And so what I want to share with you is, actually, I'll just go ahead and read. I'll read my writing. And I also did, so it was I know this is a small thumbnail of me, but so the amount of writing that I did was short that day. So I did a quick 5-minute drawing and this was short. I know I encourage you all to write for like 15 minutes. That's good because when we reach the point where we think all our thoughts are gone and we don't have anything else to add, if we keep writing, we find more insight, but it can be short. It can be short and you can still get so much out of it. So I had a lot of questions for this drawing because it felt a little different. It wasn't a circle. Also, while you can see a lot of mark making here, and I'll explain this more as I read my writing, but really because this picture was lightened, you can see more of that mark making, but really compared to some of these other things, it's very sort of smooth. You know, like this, there's high contrast, you know, between the white background and those marks. And here it's a lot smoother. It's just filled in. It's like I was just coloring it in. And that was interesting to me. I didn't feel the need to make these big, bold, high contrast marks with the warm colors. So it didn't feel like the orange was like screaming to be heard and bursting out of me. Okay. So what I wrote, first I asked 3 short questions that I underlined. So I would know those were my questions I was asking to the drawing. Sometimes I do it the opposite way, just some way to note kind of what was the question and what was the answer. And so I wrote, what if it comes out? The fire in me, where will it flow to? And I don't even know. I mean, this is where like I'm literally just free association writing, going with my subconscious. I think I was already having some of these thoughts while I was drawing because that's just how my brain works. Also, maybe because I've done this writing process so much, I'm so used to it that I already can start to kind of ask the drawing questions in my head and get insight and answers while I'm working. Probably, I don't know. A lot of that is just kind of how my brain works. But so I said, the fire in me, where will it flow to? Well, what if it comes out, the fire in me, where will it flow to? And then I wrote, or what the drawing told me, the answer was consistently, calmly, it can flow out and forever. So I had this image of like just expansion of it, like flowing out beyond this square, beyond that blue boundary, and just out forever and just calm, which is very different from how I normally express orange. Then I wrote, it can be integrated into me, one step beyond commanding calm, which is a painting I'm going to show you in a second, which is a painting I created several years ago. One step beyond commanding calm, where the sea and sky still rage. I can be even more safe inside my body. So I'll go ahead and share this. So this was a painting, I shared it in my webinar recently for like potential clients to share with them about my process and my program. This was a painting that I did, I believe I finished it maybe in 2017 or 2018, but it started in 2015 when I was still in my abusive marriage. And it took on many different forms. And in my webinar, I shared like multiple images of it along the way. And this was a representation of me and just that emotional journey I took. And so this was kind of the final place where she landed. And in the beginning, it was called Coming Out Alive. And then in the end, it was Commanding Calm. So I was beyond that survival mode of just, I'm going to come out of this alive. It was, I'm commanding calm. And so the symbolism here that I referred to, this fire, the fire in me, it can be integrated into me one step beyond this painting, Commanding Calm. You know, I think of this sky behind this female figure, which represents me. The sky is like a fiery sky. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of feelings, a lot of triggers. So the sky and like the raging waters, this is like waves of water behind me. Those are both representative of all of my feelings, all of my tumultuous feelings, but also kind of all the events going on around me, all of the triggering things. But you see the figure, she's commanding calm, right? She is composed, she is calm, she is powerful in the midst of all of this going on around her and all of these tumultuous feelings. And so what I was saying in my writing was this fiery orange can flow out and out forever, calmly, smoothly, and can be integrated into me one step beyond this commanding calm picture where the sea and sky still rage. It can be even more, I can be even more safe inside my body. So this doesn't mean that I won't have tumultuous emotions anymore, but I'm coming to this place where that orange, those passionate parts of me and all the crazy feelings and passionate things are more integrated into my sense of self. And it doesn't feel like they have to come out screaming in my artwork. It, and what that looks like in a practical sense is I am living out these aspects of my personality in my day to day. And that's something, a point I really want to drive home. So in small actions, day to day, not just in doing the artwork and writing, but just in everything, and practicing using my voice and practicing kind of standing up on my soapbox and speaking for what I believe in practicing just showing up in my feminine energy and just being myself without feeling insecure or ashamed, showing up in confidence, even when I don't fully feel it, just stepping out and just being who I am every day. I've been doing a much more consistent job of that lately. And that's been very intentional through my art making practice, intentional through a little bit of coaching that I've sought out. There are so many intentional little steps, just like my example with like the sports coach of, stop eating the cheeseburgers, practice your running, come to the rugby practice, these little things that I've been incorporating into my day to day. I'm living out more of who I am, both the blue parts and the orange parts. Don't want to down the blue parts of my personality, right? All those other things are good too. But remember, I was already comfortable with those things, but I'm more integrated now, integrating the blue aspects of my personality and the orange. And I've actually taken action, taken little steps each day to live that out. And this has been over the course of years, but more recently, over the past couple months, I've been honing in on even more and more. It's like there's so many levels and layers. And once we uncover one layer, there's another layer and another one. And I've just been consistently doing that. And over the past couple of months, I've just noticed more comfortability being like my full self, all these different parts of myself. So I want you to think about, all those different the emotions that are coming out in your art, the images. How does that relate again to like practically your life, how you interact with others, the emotions you express, just actions you're taking in your life, like how integrated do you feel? Does it still feel disjointed? Are there parts of you that are not fully coming out, that are not fully showing themselves? Or does it feel like they have to kind of come out screaming when you allow them to at certain times? And so I'm going to go back to this picture again. And I mean, this is such like this little, it's this little 5-minute crayon drawing. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to just continue in this practice because, if you do it consistently, big insight can come from whether it's a painting that took years to make or just a little crayon drawing. And so then I asked, I mentioned that I had not done this as a circle, it was a square. So I asked, why is it a square, not a circle? And then the answer was because it didn't need to be contained within a safe circle. This is just a cropped view of endless expansion. So remember, I had that image of it expanding. And then it occurred to me, okay, this is just a cropped view of that. This goes on and on and on, as wide as I can see. This is a cropped view of it in my sketchbook. A cropped view of endless expansion. It goes on and on, unhindered, and it is safe. This is safe. So I didn't feel that day that I needed to safely contain it in a circle. It didn't feel like it was coming out screaming all over the place. It felt like it could just calmly be itself and expand on and on. And I just drew the square boundary because this is the part of it, the little snapshot of it, the cropped version that fits in my sketchbook, but it goes on and on. I hope that made sense to you all, because this was some huge insight for me. And it's not like all of a sudden the other day when I did this crayon drawing that all the change happened, right? Just like you don't show up to the rugby game and all of a sudden that day perform excellently. It's all those little steps before then. So really what was happening on this particular day, even though I've put kind of more focused effort towards this the past couple of months, this was really just me kind of taking the opportunity in the short crayon drawing and the writing to notice the progress that I've made over the course of years. And it felt really rewarding and satisfying to just notice, like, wow, I have made so much progress. I feel more fully integrated. All these seemingly conflicting aspects of my personality are coming together more and more. And so it was just a beautiful opportunity to reflect on that and the progress I've made. So that's what I want you all to do. I want you, I mean, primarily just continue with this practice, continue with the redefined process. Whether it's, finishing up my session tasks that I have directed you to do, or continuing with your own scribble drawings or other types of artwork that you want to do. Continue the practice of doing this on a regular basis. Set a schedule of when you're going to do it, a time that works good for you. It can literally be 5 minutes of drawing, 5 minutes of writing, if that's all you have, but just do it consistently and continue to reflect on how this relates to your regular practical life outside of your art making time. And let it encourage you, inspire you, inform, your action that you take in your life. And if we can connect those two, connect what we're learning in the art making and writing process with real life and actually taking steps to be our full selves, then we can reflect back and see the progress. It's going to happen. And so yeah, I was excited to notice that in myself and wanted to share that with you all. Please let me know your thoughts about this. I would love for you all to make, your own posts. It can be in the comments on this, but make your own post about what you've noticed, maybe since you've started the redefined process, or maybe it's been like a shorter time period or a longer time period, but what progress can you see? What can you share with us about the progress you've seen of these different aspects of yourself being more integrated, being more whole, where you're standing more securely, more confidently in who you are? Because that's the goal of this, right? This whole process is to reconnect with and or redefine who you are and to stand confidently in that. So I want to hear from you what progress you're seeing. All right. I'm going to end my screen share, and you guys have a good rest of the week and a good weekend. And I'd love to hear from you. Anything that's going on, just reach out to me. All right.